Welcome to PandaAudioBooks, the perfect place for a huge collection of fantasy novels. If you enjoy my content and want to support my work, a small contribution via PayPal is greatly appreciated. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell to stay updated with our latest audiobook chapters. Chapter 226, Liu's Rule. Fang Mu had risen to prominence within the Violet Fate sect. There was not a single inner sect disciple in the Violet Qi division who didn't know of him. The name of this newly promoted Master Alchemist reverberated like thunder in the ears of the other Master Alchemists of the East Pill division. Considering the situation with the inner sect disciples and the Master Alchemists, there is no need to even mention the outer sect disciples and the apprentice alchemists. The name of alchemist Fang Mu swept across the sect like a raging wind, and his prestige among the Violet sect disciples only grew greater. Speculation began to run wild regarding Fang Mu. The general consensus was that he had an eccentric personality, didn't speak much, didn't like to go out or engage in social activities. In truth, very few people actually knew what he even looked like. All requests for medicinal pills went through by Yunlai. As for Fang Mu, although everyone knew his name, no one ever had the opportunity to meet him. Because of the rules of the East Pill division prohibiting the intrusion of Violet Qi division disciples, Fang Mu became an increasingly mysterious figure. This, in addition to his rule of only 3 orders per day, the results of which were equivalent to the work of furnace lords, only served to increase his reputation. In fact, the rule of 3 orders per day had caused the inner sect disciples to create a trade system, in which prices continued to increase. At this particular moment, deep within the East Pill division, was a violet-colored mountain peak. The peak was not very high, and in fact was somewhat concealed by the surrounding peaks. However, an indescribable aura existed here which made it clear that while the mountain was not tall, it served as the heart of the entire mountain range. Sitting atop this mountain was an old man. In front of him was a work table, upon which lay a medicinal pill. He looked at it, his eyes glowing with a strange light. Behind this old man were 3 other persons. These people were by no means young. All of them had cultivation bases at the nascent soul stage. However, it seemed as if they didn't dare to breathe too loudly in front of the other old man. Their expressions were filled with respect. This old man was none other than Chu Yuyan's master, Grandmaster Pill Demon, whose name could rock the entire southern domain. He examined the medicinal pill in front of him for some time. Soon, the sun began to set. Finally, he slowly waved his hand and picked up the pill. "Interesting," he said, then began to laugh. He closed his hand over the pill and rubbed it. When he opened his hand again, ash drifted out into the wind. One of the 3 men behind Grandmaster Pill Demon hesitated for a moment, then quietly said, "Pill Demon, there is discontent within the Violet Qi division." "Discontent," said Pill Demon coolly. "Let them be patient. If anyone causes problems for the disciples of the East Pill division, they will be cut off from medicinal pills for 10 years. With that, he flicked his sleeve and disappeared. The 3 men exchanged glances. With bitter smiles, they bowed to the position Pill Demon had just occupied, then turned and left. Beneath the evening sky, behind the short, violet-colored mountain was a towering peak which stretched up to the sky. Halfway up the mountain was a pavilion, the greater part of which stretched out of the mountain to hang in mid-air. During the day, you could stand here to look out across the land. At night time, when the stars came out, it almost seemed possible to reach up and touch the sky. This particular evening, the rays of the setting sun fell across everything, creating a languid atmosphere. The golden glow, combined with the rosy clouds on the horizon, led to a scene of incredible beauty. Within the pavilion, the evening air stirred. The wind did not disperse the clouds, but did send strands of long, black hair drifting into the wind. The hair belonged to none other than Chu Yuyan. She stood quietly within the pavilion, her hair dancing in the wind. Her brow was furrowed slightly as she lifted her hand up. There in her palm was a medicinal pill. How did he concoct it? She thought. Could it be that his aptitude with the Tao of alchemy is similar to his latent talent with plants and vegetation? Is there really someone so gifted in the Tao of alchemy? It's breathtaking. The pill was waxen and yellow, and did not seem to be a complete product. By expending some spirit stones, she had been able to purchase a pill from an inner sect disciple. Of course, that medicinal pill had been the handiwork of Meng Hao. After getting a hold of the pill, Chu Yuyan's first reaction was that of disdain. But then she had studied it fastidiously. As she did, her expression changed. In the end, she stared wide-eyed and disbelieving. After studying the pill for 7 days, she had eventually ground it into powder. After such thorough examination, although she still felt annoyed at the thought of Fang Mu, she couldn't help but admit that as for this medicinal pill, even she could only create it if she devoted her complete mind and spirit to the task. Finally, she had used Grandmaster Pill Demon's unique method to reconcoct the pill. She had taken the powder of the original pill to form a second pill. After the second refinement, the pill's medicinal strength was actually 60%. That was her limit. If he learned my master's refinement technique, she murmured softly, who knows what level of medicinal pills he would be able to concoct. She looked off at the rosy clouds in the distance, then back down at the pill in her hand. Master said that he might hold the secret to enlightenment regarding the 3 mortalities pill. But he's so arrogant. Last time I went to visit, he locked himself inside and refused to come out. Thinking of this made her more annoyed. Even the mere name of Fang Mu would cause her temper to boil up with irritation. This Fang Mu's detestableness is second only to that damned Meng Hao, she said, gnashing her teeth. Clearly, the 2 people she hated most in her heart were Meng Hao, first, and Fang Mu, second. However, she still didn't know why Fang Mu caused her so much irritation. Of course, if she knew that Fang Mu and Meng Hao were one and the same, then she would immediately understand why. At the same time that Chu Yuyan was muttering to herself, Meng Hao sat in front of his pill furnace concocting a batch of medicinal pills. A roaring sound could be heard, filling the immortal's cave. Meng Hao sighed. The past few months, he had spent every day concocting pills. He was just now finishing with all the pills he owed to various members of the inner sect. The pill furnace in front of him was reaching the end of its life. It would definitely crack to pieces soon. Meng Hao rubbed the bridge of his nose, then opened the door of his immortal's cave to look at the sunset. He took a deep breath. The mountain breath carried the chill of autumn. As he breathed it in, the tension slowly eased from his painfully swollen head. Once I finish with all the old orders, then all I have to worry about are the 3 orders per day, as well as the medicinal pills I need for my personal cultivation. Spirit platform pills are already only nominally effective. If I concoct anything, it should be a Foundation Establishment Day. His eyes glittered. Foundation Establishment Day was a medicinal pill suitable for the late Foundation Establishment stage. It was an incredibly potent pill, one of the most valuable types in all of the Violet Fate sect for the Foundation Establishment stage. Recently, Meng Hao had refined over 1,000 batches of pills, and had acquired hundreds of formulas. One of them was the formula for Foundation Establishment Day. After some research, he'd come to the conclusion that in order to make any progress, he would have to rest some, then use all his skill to concoct a Foundation Establishment Day with at least 90% medicinal strength. With such a pill, he could complete his 6th Tao pillar and begin formation of the 7th. It's too bad that the Violet Chi from the East Manual is only available to Furnace Lords. It's a legendary art, and there's no other way to get a look at it. Careful records are kept of everyone who studies it. Lost in thought, Meng Hao strolled down the mountain. This was the first time in a long time that he had been outside. Even inner sect disciples aren't qualified to consult the Violet Chi from the East Manual. They are forced to cultivate based on speculations. Only conclave disciples of the Violet Chi division or Furnace Lords can personally peruse the real manual to study the technique. Meng Hao was determined to gain access to it. Only in this way could he prepare to form a violet core. With that foundation, he could consume the pill to form the perfect gold core. I've searched for some of the medicinal plants required for the perfect gold core, but am still missing quite a few. Once I become a Furnace Lord, it should become a bit easier. Meng Hao passed through various valleys, lost in thought. Along the way, he ran into quite a few apprentice alchemists. Some of them recognized him, and stared in amazement. Then their faces would fill with excitement. After all, 30,000 apprentice alchemists had watched him be promoted to master alchemist. It was no surprise that many would recognize him still. However, now that he was a master alchemist, they didn't dare to stop and chat with him. Instead, they simply saluted respectfully. Meng Hao wanted to find a quiet place to think. After smiling in response to the apprentice alchemists, he disappeared in a flash. He left the mountains and valleys of the East Pill Division to enter the Violet Qi Division. Here, very few people would recognize him. He walked happily amidst the mountains, wearing his master alchemist's robe. No one stopped to question him, so he proceeded along quietly. As he strolled, he looked around at the scenery. He had been in the Violet Fate sect for roughly 3 years. Although he was relatively familiar with it, it was actually a very large place. There were many areas he had never been to. As he walked, he suddenly heard the sound of an argument in which his name was being mentioned, that Fang Mu is definitely fishing for fame and compliments. He thinks his pills are so amazing, so he wants to make trouble for us. We can't accept it. I already reported to the elders about it and they're going to get in touch with the people from the East Pill Division. Fang Mu will be punished. As for you, you measly apprentice alchemist, you had best apologize for your offense. Elder brother Liu, please calm your anger. This is my fault. However, it really is true that the next 10 days or more worth of orders have already been filled. There was a jumble of conversation, then laughter. Meng Hao listened to a few sentences and was certain that one of the voices belonged to Bai Yunlai. He walked around an ornamental rock formation into a wide public square within which could be seen 4 pagodas. Within the pagodas sat a handful of young men who were all looking at the square, where could be seen a few dozen Violet Qi Division inner sect disciples. The young men sitting in the pagodas were not ordinary disciples, but chosen of the Violet Qi Division. There were 4 pagodas in total, and 4 chosen, 1 in each pagoda. The handful of people who stood in the square were scattered about, with Bai Yunlai in the middle. A blue-robed young man was currently pointing at himself and swearing at Bai Yunlai contemptuously. My words might not be rules in the sect, but as far as you're concerned, they are. If I tell you to slap yourself on the face and apologize, then you better well do it. Bai Yunlai's face went pale and his body trembled. His cultivation base was weak. He was a well-informed person, but quite a few people actually viewed him as being in a very low position. This was not the first time something like this had happened recently. However, he never told Meng Hao, as he didn't want to distract him. He was always careful in his interactions, but there was always the possibility that he would end up offending someone. As for this young man named Liu, he had relied on his relatively high position within the sect to request medicinal pills of Meng Hao. However, only 3 orders per day were allowed, and they were first come first serve. Bai Yunlai had done his best not to provoke this Liu youth, but his conciliatory words had only caused him to become hostile. Even lowly people have their honor. However, Bai Yunlai, trembling, bitter, stared at Liu. He lifted his hand, and seemed just about to slap himself in the face when Meng Hao's calm voice echoed out, "Bai Yunlai." Chapter 227. Pill Blacklist. When Meng Hao's voice rang out, Bai Yunlai looked shocked. He suddenly turned his head and saw Meng Hao slowly strolling out from behind the ornamental rock. He walked slowly, and his face was expressionless. When Bai Yunlai saw him, his heart leapt with excitement, as well as a little bit of shame. In his mind, he had lost face for Fang Mu. He was about to open his mouth to say something, when Meng Hao's gaze fell upon him, and it was filled with admiration. That gaze made Bai Yunlai take a deep breath, as if he was proud to have someone recognize all the work he had been doing. It was a good feeling to be following along with Meng Hao as he rose to prominence. Meng Hao's appearance obviously attracted the attention of the others in the square. They looked over, but of course none of them recognized who he was. The chosen in the 4 pagodas frowned. Obviously, Meng Hao was a stranger to them as well. "Who told you to put your hand down?" said the young man named Liu. "Do you want me to help you slap yourself?" His voice was filled with contempt. He, too, had caught sight of Meng Hao. But this was a valley of the Violet Qi division. He wouldn't let his grandeur be lessened just because some master alchemist showed up. This was especially true because he knew all of the important master alchemists in the sect. Standing directly behind Liu were 5 others. Their gazes were filled with contempt, and cold smiles broke out onto their faces. "Bai Yunlai, come here," said Meng Hao, ignoring Liu. He also ignored the other gazes which fell upon him. Meng Hao had encountered many people like this. It didn't matter if they were chosen or Dao children. Considering Meng Hao's position, they were nothing more than wild dogs that he could afford to simply ignore. Bai Yunlai quickly turned and took a few steps toward Meng Hao, but then Liu snorted coldly and began to shove his hand out toward him. "I never said you could leave. Seems you need a beating." His hand was just about to slam into Bai Yunlai when Meng Hao's previous expressionless calm changed. A cold light suddenly sprang from his eyes and swept over Liu. The look was like a clap of thunder, a lightning bolt that split the night sky, or dark clouds of destruction that suddenly appeared in the middle of a sunny day. It was as if rumbling peals of thunder had filled Liu's mind. His expression changed. Meng Hao's gaze was like that of a gargantuan beast that had the power to consume all living things. It caused Liu to unconsciously hold his hand back. By this time, Bai Yunlai had reached Meng Hao. Meng Hao retracted his gaze, then turned to leave with Bai Yunlai. Considering the level of his cultivation base, as well as his position within the sect, these disciples were far beneath him. There was no reason for him to show off in front of these so-called chosen. Of course, other than the young man named Liu, none of the other Violet Qi division cultivators within the square had been able to sense what just happened, not even the 5 people who stood behind him. The only thing they saw was Meng Hao's fierce attitude, and the harsh glint in his eye. However, anyone in the world could give a harsh look to someone. They couldn't care less about that. The expression of the chosen in the 4 pagodas did change, though. They looked pensive. However, the followers who stood outside the pagodas were obviously much the same as the cultivators in the middle of the square. They had no clue as to what had just happened. The 5 people behind Liu immediately rushed forward to obstruct Meng Hao's path. Their eyes shined with ill will. The Violet Qi division isn't somewhere that you can just run your mouth and then leave at will. "Halt!" Elder brother Liu was explaining the rules. "Bai Yunlai, you can't leave on 2 feet. You'll need a beating." Such gall! Even if you are a master alchemist, do you really think that you can look down on inner sect disciples of the Violet Qi division so wantonly? Liu took a deep breath and then strode forward. His voice cold, he said, "You can leave if you want to, but this Bai Yunlai disrespected us. To let him go unpunished would be an insult to the entire Violet Qi division inner sect." He was scared of Meng Hao. However, while his voice was less arrogant than it had been moments ago, it was still arrogant nonetheless. Bai Yunlai's face grew pale and he forced himself to suppress the fury that arose in his eyes. He knew that Meng Hao was a master alchemist, but they were in the territory of the inner sect disciples of the Violet Qi division, so he still had some misgivings. He didn't mind slapping himself in the face a few times. He didn't want Meng Hao to get caught up in any troubles because of him. So he stopped in his tracks. Even as he did, Meng Hao also stopped and turned around. "Who are these people?" he asked coolly. Bai Yunlai's voice was low as he replied, "Violet Qi division inner sect disciple Liu Yanbing, he." Meng Hao nodded, then calmly said, "From today on, I will not accept any medicinal pill orders from this Liu Yanbing." As the words rang out, the inner sect disciples all stared in surprise. A few of the more astute among their numbers were already starting to get an idea of what was going on. The chosen in the pagodas all stared at Meng Hao with glittering eyes. One of them had already stepped out of the pagoda and walked forward a few paces. "Not just him," said Meng Hao unhurriedly. "Those people behind him, too. I won't accept any orders from them either." Bai Yunlai's face filled with shock, but he nodded nonetheless. Liu Yanbing's face tightened as he suddenly looked at Meng Hao. His eyes shined with disbelief. If at this point he didn't realize who Meng Hao was, then he didn't deserve to have practiced cultivation up to the foundation establishment stage. However, there are a lot of stupid people in the world. One of the young men next to Liu Yanbing suddenly laughed. Who do you think you are? Seems you think we were begging you to concoct pills or something, so now you're not afraid of your superiors. What makes you think you're so amazing that you can talk like that? Because I'm Fang Mu, said Meng Hao coolly. This single sentence instantly caused the young man's eyes to bulge and a look of disbelief to cover his face. Fang Mu. The faces of the others who stood behind Liu Yanbing all twisted. They looked at Meng Hao, stunned. It wasn't just them. All of the Violet Qi Division disciples in the square gasped when they heard these words. Their eyes began to shine brightly as they looked toward Meng Hao. The faces of the Violet Qi Division chosen flicked through a variety of expressions. Silence instantly filled the square. The name of Fang Mu had towered over the Violet Fate sect throughout the past months. He had an illustrious reputation. Few people didn't know about him and his pill concocting. Therefore, when Meng Hao spoke the name of Fang Mu, it was like a thunderclap resounding across a plain. Liu Yanbing's face fell, and the cultivators behind him suddenly looked worried. Moments ago, they had been happy to teach Bai Yunlai a lesson. After all, he was merely an apprentice alchemist. But now that alchemist Fang was here in the flesh, they had no desire to offend him. They immediately rushed forward in an attempt to provide explanations. However, Meng Hao turned. He had no desire to continue speaking with these so-called inner sect disciples. Regardless of whether it was because of his status or his position, in all aspects, he and these people were as different as black and white. He turned to leave, Bai Yunlai in tow. Even as he did, though, the four chosen hurried to catch up, obviously intent on starting a conversation. Liu Yanbing's heart was filled with bitterness. However, it is difficult to dismount a tiger after you start riding it. He refused to yield so easily. Gritting his teeth, he forced his mouth open to try to regain some face. So, you're Fang Mu. Well, maybe you won't concoct pills for me, but do you think you're the only master alchemist in the East Pill Division? Besides, the pills you concoct are low quality, not even worth looking at. Meng Hao laughed coldly. He stopped in place for a third time. Turning, he looked intently at Liu Yanbing. If this guy hadn't continued to speak, then he would never deign to argue with him, as uninformed as he was. But his strange, contradictory words caused Meng Hao's gaze to grow icy. I'm only one among 1,000 master alchemists in the East Pill Division. Maybe my pills aren't worth looking at. So from now on, I won't concoct pills for anyone who has any dealings with you. Meng Hao's cold words caused the cultivators surrounding Liu Yanbing to edge away. It was hard to tell which one went first. None of them wished to cause any further offense. Liu Yanbing soon stood there alone. All of the people he had been on friendly terms with had moved far away from him. Fang Mu was now a very popular master alchemist. It was even difficult to get one pill from him. Offending him simply wasn't worth it. Meng Hao continued calmly, also, if I hear of anyone selling you one of my pills, then that person will also be cut off from me. When the onlookers heard this, they all gasped. These words completely showed how powerful Fang Mu was. Some people might think he was being a bit overbearing, but he was a master alchemist. Master alchemists are not to be offended. Except, you know what? You offended me, continued Meng Hao, his voice even colder. Actually, he didn't care if what he was about to do caused others to be dissatisfied. Their dissatisfaction would not come to fall upon him, because he was a master alchemist, a position which demanded respect. They would only blame Liu Yanbing's inability to open his eyes to reality. Therefore, for the next 100 years, not a single master alchemist will concoct pills for you. Meng Hao said the words calmly. As he did, he lifted his right hand to reveal a white medallion, upon which he branded Liu Yanbing's name. This was the ultimate power wielded by master alchemists in the Violet Fate sect. The pill blacklist. As soon as he branded Liu Yanbing's name onto the medallion, all the master alchemists in the East Pill Division could sense it. They pulled out their pill blacklist medallions to look at them. Before, there had been 13 names on the blacklist. With Liu Yanbing, there were now 14. The entire square was completely silent. All eyes were on the medallion in Meng Hao's hand. Looks of shock appeared on the four chosen. Somebody in the crowd recognized the medallion and said hoarsely, "That's a pill blacklist medallion." The voice was filled with astonishment. A pill blacklist medallion. Alchemist Fang Mu actually used the pill blacklist medallion. Liu Yanbing is finished. It doesn't matter what clan he's from. He'll never have the seniority to get his name removed from the East Pill Division blacklist. Now that he's on the blacklist, not a single master alchemist will concoct pills for Liu Yanbing for the next 100 years. He basically can't practice cultivation. Alchemist Fang Mu, he really dared to use the medallion. Meng Hao stood there as the buzz of conversation filled the air. Next to him Bai Yunlai trembled and stared in amazement. His heart filled with powerful emotions. As of now, he felt as if he would even be willing to die for Fang Mu. To be treated the way that Fang Mu treated him, caused him to wish to repay the favor with his life. Liu Yanbing's expression was filled with despair, and he was panting rapidly. His eyes were bright red and his entire body shook. His face was deathly white. As he thought of the fissomeness of the pill blacklist, and the consequences of having his name on it, his eyes filled with hopelessness. The pill blacklist medallion could only be used by a master alchemist twice, and was only to be used out of absolute necessity. How could he have ever imagined that Fang Mu would truly use the pill blacklist medallion on him? His body grew cold and his eyes blank. It was like his head had been struck repeatedly by lightning. His heart trembled. He knew what it meant to be placed on the pill blacklist. Regardless of his clan, there was no way anyone would be able to help him. He suddenly regretted everything. If time could flow backward, he would never have offended Meng Hao. Body trembling, the only thing he could say was, Alchemist Fang. This chapter was sponsored by Charles Townsend, Brian Waddell, Mallow Kennand, Vidyar Patti, and Chandra Johannes. Chapter 228. Falling leaves are beautiful. They only live one season. Suddenly, laughter rang out. The four chosen had already pushed their way through the crowd. Ignoring Liu Yanbing, they walked straight for Meng Hao, clasping hands respectfully as they approached him. Their expressions were serious and polite, but they spoke with smiles and laughter. Alchemist Fang, sir, I've always wanted to meet you. Now that we've run into each other, allow me to humbly act as host. Let's drink some alcohol and gaze at the moon together. Wouldn't it be wonderful? Ha ha ha. Elder brother Shu beat me to the punch. Alchemist Fang, your skill in the Tao of alchemy is the talk of the sect. Since we happen to meet today, would it be an imposition to allow junior brother here to join you? We can all treat you. Alchemist Fang, that pill order I placed recently isn't urgent. Just get to it whenever it's convenient. Please don't leave yet. As junior brother Bai Yunlai knows, we sincerely wish to pay you our respects. As for Liu Yanbing and his friends, they were completely ignored. It didn't matter if Liu Yanbing was related to a patriarch of the sect. How could his position possibly compare to that of a master alchemist? Fang Mu was a master alchemist with obviously unlimited potential, and one who didn't shirk from using the pill blacklist. It was clear who was superior here. Among the 1,000 master alchemists, some wouldn't use the pill blacklist medallion even once in their entire life. Some would use it only if absolutely necessary. Generally, they would be hesitant, though. Most people are not decisive enough to do so. But Fang Mu used it without hesitation. The threatening aura this created permeated into the hearts of everyone present. The four chosen crowded around Meng Hao, as did the rest of the inner sect disciples who were with them. Smiles covered their faces. Even though it appeared as if Fang Mu's cultivation base were not even in the foundation establishment stage yet, they still treated him with utmost courtesy. Meng Hao smiled slightly, clasped hands and bowed back to them. After a moment, he tried to make some excuses and get away, but couldn't. Eventually, he decided it would be ungracious not to accept their kindness. Nodding, he followed them off into the distance, trailed by Yunlai. The sound of their happy laughter and harmonious chatting echoed out. Back in the square, Liu Yanbing stood there, his face pale white. His mind spun, and his eyes were blank and filled with despair. The other cultivators in the square stared with various expressions. However, it was at this moment that off in the distance, Meng Hao suddenly turned to them and clasped hands in a bow. Fellow Taoists and sect members, why don't you join us? Hearing this, the eyes of the four chosen glittered brightly, giving meaningful looks to Meng Hao. They also turned and beckoned for the others to join them. Seeing this, the faces of the other inner sect disciples in the square lifted. They hurried over, clasping hands and bowing. Soon the whole group of dozens or more cultivators all walked off into the distance. Meng Hao was at the center of it all, a blazing moon surrounded by glittering stars. The laughter and talking drifted out with the wind. Now only Liu Yanbing and his friends remained in the large square. Their faces were unsightly, especially the faces of those who stared at Liu Yanbing. Their eyes were filled with fury. In the following days, Meng Hao didn't spend all day every day concocting pills. He often went to the mountains and valleys of the Violet Qi division. Slowly, more and more people began to recognize his face. Gradually, his reputation in the Violet Qi division grew even better. At the same time, he also spent time with the other master alchemists. He would call on them to visit, exchange pointers about the Tao of alchemy, and share recent experiences. He made sure that each visit was one of mutual gain. It was in this way that he gradually began to build up his social network. As for Liu Yanbing, it was with great bitterness that he came to realize how truly horrifying the pill blacklist was. The master alchemists who used to concoct pills for him would now completely ignore him. It didn't matter how much money he offered, none of them would concoct a single pill. Furthermore, all the people whom he had used to be close to, gradually began to drift further and further away. In fact, on one occasion when he went to visit his clan patriarch, he was severely berated and then sent on his way. In the Violet Fate sect, master alchemists are not to be offended. Once the pill blacklist medallion is used, the word would spread throughout the whole sect. Even patriarchs know that the most fearsome thing in the East Pill division was not the Tao of alchemy, but the protection they had set up for themselves. That protection was evident from the results of the pill blacklist. Within the East Pill division, there can be power struggles and competition. But if outsiders dared to dishonor it, then the alchemists would stand together united in their fury and desire for revenge. This is because master alchemists are not to be dishonored or offended. That was an ironclad rule of the East Pill division. That was how the pill blacklist medallion arrangement began in the first place. In the outside world, it might not be a big deal to offend a master alchemist who was not from the East Pill division. Other master alchemists wouldn't get involved. However, in the East Pill division, if you offended one, then you offended all. In some ways, it might not seem very reasonable, but that unreasonable arrangement ensured that the master alchemists were treated with respect wherever they went, inside the sect or outside. Offend one, offend all. Few could afford to do such a thing. Of course, if someone offended another master alchemist, Meng Hao would not go against the tide. As a master alchemist, the most important thing to him was to defend the position of all master alchemists. And so, time passed. Meng Hao continued to concoct medicinal pills. 3 batches per day. The new arrangement made the other master alchemists much less resentful. After all, there were tens of thousands of disciples in the inner sect of the Violet Qi division. Seeking out master alchemists involved certain rules, but as long as the alchemists didn't get too greedy, there wouldn't be too much resentment. When you added in the fact that Meng Hao went out of his way to go visit the other master alchemists, it was like a cool wind blowing through their hair. Their sulkiness dissipated, and gradually, they all came to accept him. As for Meng Hao, in addition to his 3 batches of pills per day, he spent a lot of time creating medicinal pills to hand over to the sect. In addition, he used Foundation Establishment Day to slowly increase his cultivation base. Several months later, on one late night, Meng Hao sat cross-legged in his Immortal's cave. In front of him were 3 bottles of Foundation Establishment Day. After looking at them closely for a while, his eyes began to shine brightly. Today I will create my 6th Tao pillar. He took a deep breath. As of now, his 6th Tao pillar was more than 90% complete. Because of the engulfing power he knew would appear, he had waited some time before attempting to complete the final 10%. The preparations had taken some time, but now that he was certain it was safe, he was ready to start. His eyes shined with determination. He picked up a Foundation Establishment Day, swallowed it, and closed his eyes. The sixth Tao pillar began to congeal inside of him. A golden glow began to spread out from his body, within which were streams of magical symbols. All of a sudden, a garrulous chatter drifted out. 3 bullies. 3 bullies. Less than 3 won't do. The noise, of course, came from the meat jelly, who had just woken up. It spoke the words and then spit out a mouthful of qi. The qi spread out to cover the golden glow that surrounded Meng Hao. It made the qi coming off of his perfect Tao pillars look ordinary. This way, the Violet Fate sect wouldn't detect anything unusual. Time passed slowly. By dawn, Meng Hao's body was trembling. His skin was withered, and an intensely violent gravitational force suddenly appeared. It seemed as if it had been thirsty for thousands of years and wanted to swallow up Meng Hao's body and soul to sate its thirst. Meng Hao was prepared for this, though. As soon as the gravitational force appeared, he immediately crushed the several pill bottles that remained in front of him. These were what he had worked so hard to produce, Foundation Establishment Day pills of 90% medicinal strength. He popped them into his mouth. As soon as they entered his mouth, they exploded, transforming into boundless spiritual power that immediately began to be sucked into the sixth Tao pillar. At noontime, Meng Hao's eyes snapped open, and they shined with a bright, glittering light. As he sat there cross-legged, he didn't see much different than before, except that he looked a little weaker. Inside, however, was a raging storm. The shocking ripples which emanated from his cultivation base were consumed one by the meat jelly. His sixth perfect Tao pillar had appeared. Meng Hao took a deep breath and slowly closed his eyes. After a moment, he opened them again. They no longer glowed, but were calm and filled with a strange light. The light was confidence born of his cultivation base. 6 perfect Tao pillars. Mid-foundation establishment. With one more Tao pillar, he would be in late foundation establishment. At that point, a Tao child with a flawless foundation wouldn't qualify to even attack him. Their Tao pillars would be reduced to trembling by the crushing pressure he could emit. Even now, with his 6 Tao pillars, he could easily exterminate any Tao child. As for the so-called chosen, they were like ants or dried weeds that could be crushed on a whim. Perfect foundation. Such incredible potency. Meng Hao's voice was soft, but his eyes shone with anticipation. This anticipation was for his 9th Tao pillar, when he completed the great circle of foundation establishment. There was a flickering in front of Meng Hao and the meat jelly appeared. It danced back and forth, its eyes wide. 3 bullies, it cried. After shedding, the meat jelly hadn't transformed back into a parrot, but had maintained its meat jelly form. 3 bullies. No less than 3 bullies, it repeated in a voice that could chop nails and slice iron. It appeared content. With a burp and some muttering, it disappeared into the bag of the cosmos to find the Li clan patriarch and discuss noontime naps. Meng Hao stood and opened the door of his immortal's cave. Dazzling morning sunlight filtered down. He took a deep breath. Winter was ending and spring was beginning. There was no snow, like in the state of Zhao. Winter in the Violet Fate sect had no snow. He looked quietly up into the sky and suddenly realized that he had been in the Violet Fate sect for more than 3 years now. In fact, now that he calculated it carefully, it would soon be 4 years. Time flies so quickly, he said quietly. Practicing cultivation on his own, he could truly sense the passage of time. His senses were no longer those of immortals. As he reminisced, he thought of Chen Fan, elder sister Shu and Fatty. Various scenes played out in his head. He knew where they were, but they had no idea where he was. By this time, the name of Meng Hao was already a thing of the past. Few people brought it up anymore. Soon, everyone would forget it. All the waves from the events 4 years ago had died down and disappeared. Life is like a dream, like a leaf that, no matter how beautiful, can only live for one season. He looked at the buds sprouting from the great trees off in the distance, and a smile broke out on his face. He liked his identity here as Fang Mu. He enjoyed how being in the East Pill Division felt like being in an institute of higher learning. He lifted his hand, and a jade slip appeared on his palm. This jade slip had been branded by the Li clan patriarch at the behest of the meat jelly. It was branded with a Li clan conclave technique. Self-will incantation. Chapter 229. Because this will can only belong to devils. Self-will incantation. A Li clan conclave technique. In this technique, one's will was the key in which magic can be cultivated. Furthermore, if cultivated to a consummate level, then during spirit severing or Tao enlightenment, karma could be seized. The technique actually seemed more like a scripture. Except it wasn't a scripture scroll, but seemingly a fragment of a scroll. Nonetheless, this short passage was enough to become a conclave technique of the Li clan. Meng Hao examined it thoughtfully for a while. Then, his expression flickered and he waved his hand. The jade slip disappeared. Not much time passed before Bai Yunlai appeared, walking up hastily. He formally greeted Meng Hao in a respectful tone. Ever since the matter with Liu Yanbing, Bai Yunlai carried himself differently in front of Meng Hao. They were still close, but it was now clear that their positions were different. There was a slight tension between them. Meng Hao tried a few times to get him to act more like he had when Meng Hao first joined the sect. However, it just made him nervous. So, he allowed Bai Yunlai to greet him formally every time they met, and to speak in a reverent tone. Meng Hao could only sigh at this change. He understood that it would be impossible to maintain the same relationship they always had. His own Tao of alchemy was growing further and further away from Bai Yunlai's, and as such, the respect the man showed grew deeper and deeper. Grandmaster Fang, these are the orders I've accepted recently. Please, take a look. He handed over a bag of holding. Meng Hao glanced it over and then tried to chat a bit with Bai Yunlai. Bai Yunlai's respectful expression didn't change, which caused Meng Hao to sigh again inwardly. With a slight nod of his head, he tucked the bag of holding away. Bai Yunlai hesitated for a moment, then looked at Meng Hao and lowered his voice. Grandmaster Fang, there's only one more month until this year's pill auction. Sir, I'm not sure if you plan to participate in the auction or not. Pill auction. Meng Hao thought back to 4 years ago when he had first joined the Violet Fate sect. There had been a pill auction underway at that time. Now, he had quite a reputation in the East Pill division. The pill auction was a place for master alchemists to manifest their reputation. Also, it was a place where medicinal pills were directly sold for spirit stones in an official capacity. The pill auction only happened once per year, and Meng Hao had never attended one before. Suddenly, his heart began to thump. He was a master alchemist who was quite popular within the sect. But he wanted to know how much a price his pills would fetch in the southern domain in general. Master alchemists could offer their wares with their name attached to it, or anonymously. In the case of the latter, no one, not even members of the sect, would know whose pill it was that was up for sale. However, there is no wall in the world which can hold back any wind. It might be difficult for the elders to figure out which pill was made by whom, but if Grandmaster Pill Demon wanted to know, then he could naturally be able to figure it out. Meng Hao muttered to himself for a moment, and then nodded. Not only did he want to see how much his pills were worth in the outside world, he also wanted to replenish his supply of spirit stones. Copying the Foundation Establishment Day had cost him quite a bit. Even as a master alchemist who was frequently compensated by inner sect disciples for pill concocting, he still couldn't afford such expenditures. As of now, he had quite a collection of medicinal plants, but not a lot of spirit stones. This, of course, caused Meng Hao to sigh. When he was young, he had always dreamed of being rich. That dream seemed to be just as far away as ever. He saw off Bai Yunlai and was standing there in thought, when suddenly a bright beam of light appeared off in the distance. The image of a slim, graceful woman was visible inside. It was none other than Chu Yuyan. The instant he saw her, Meng Hao sighed at his bad luck, then immediately turned and entered his immortal's cave. Fang Mu. The instant her voice echoed out, the door of the immortal's cave shut and sealed. Then, Meng Hao's voice could be heard, Fang Mu isn't home. Chu Yuyan's eyes blazed with killing intent. Her veins bulged as she stood outside the immortal's cave, gnashing her teeth. She had come to call on Meng Hao on multiple occasions during the past year, but he always seemed to be away, and never inside the cave. For him to act like this, as if he had just caught sight of some kind of devilish fiend, caused fury to burn within her. Teeth clenched, she said, Fang Mu, are you hiding from me because you have some secret you don't want people to know about? Every time she came here and found the door shut, she would say something like this. She was more and more certain that Fang Mu was harboring some secret. For him to act like this every time she came really set her on fire. Whenever anyone said his name, the irritated feeling would fill her and she would feel like doing something to him. Meng Hao's voice drifted out of the Immortal's cave. What you can't see, can't annoy you. Chu Yuyan stared with wide eyes. She banged her fist onto the door. A boom echoed out. The door rattled a bit, but wasn't damaged in any way. Get out here. I'm concocting pills. Are you coming out or not? Elder Sister Chu, I'm concocting pills, really. Who the hell said I'm your elder sister? I'm a furnace lord. You're just a master alchemist. If you don't come out here right now, we'll see how long you can stay there in your Immortal's cave. Fine, fellow Daoist Chu. You know, last time, you camped out next to my Immortal's cave for 7 days. Later, a lot of slanderous rumors spread throughout the sect. It's really not a good thing. Don't you agree? I, Fang Mu, am not married to any beloved, and am very concerned with my reputation. Such rumors are really intolerable. Fellow Daoist Chu, please refrain from harming my reputation in this way. Take your leave, quickly. Meng Hao sighed. Actually, Chu Yuyan's intuition frightened him. He had been avoiding her for years now, because he had the strong feeling that if he had any interaction with her, she might begin to pick up some clues. If she somehow realized that he was Meng Hao, well, he didn't dare to think of how horrific the consequences might be. Chu Yuyan gnashed her teeth and stamped her foot angrily. Then she turned and left. Sensing that she'd gone, Meng Hao sighed in relief. A wry smile appeared on his face. Everything about the East Pill Division was good except for Chu Yuyan. With her here, he didn't feel secure. If she keeps causing problems for me, I might have to think of some other method to deal with her. His eyes shined with a cold light, but his face's usual calm expression returned. He stopped thinking about Chu Yuyan. With the wave of a hand, the earthly fire within his Immortal's cave sprang to life. A pill furnace appeared to hover directly over the fire. This particular furnace of Meng Hao's had 3 cranes carved onto its surface. As the furnace began to glow red from the heat, the 3 cranes turned the color of blood. They looked like they might fly out from the surface of the furnace at any moment. It was a cowing sight. Meng Hao had traded a large collection of medicinal pills and plants with a veteran master alchemist to acquire this blood crane furnace. Having used it for some time, he was very familiar with it. The furnace quickly became bright red, but Meng Hao stood off to the side, paying it no attention. A thoughtful look appeared in his eyes. What type of pill should I concoct for the pill auction, he thought. Hundreds of pill formulas flashed through his mind, but none of them caught his attention. Enough time passed for an incense stick to burn. The pill furnace was as red as blood, and its glow filled the entire Immortal's cave, causing everything to look red. Meng Hao's eyes suddenly flashed. I'll concoct a poison pill. Based on Meng Hao's understanding of the Tao of alchemy, poison pills generally did not have recipes that were handed down. They were usually created spontaneously or from memory by the master alchemist. This prevented unauthorized pill formulas from being passed around. Poison pills were somewhat of a taboo. However, most master alchemists would research and concoct them at some point. It was a way to prove not only a master alchemist's skill in the Tao of alchemy, but rather, his understanding of plants and vegetation. One must have a thorough mastery of the variations of plants and vegetation to be able to concoct a poison pill uniquely classified as belonging to a given master alchemist. A pill created by one person that 10,000 people couldn't dispel. All master alchemists thirsted to create something like this. Meng Hao took a deep breath, then sat down cross-legged next to the pill furnace. He allowed the heat from it to fill his body, and then closed his eyes. He sat silently in meditation. Days passed. The fire continued to burn. The blood crane furnace showed no signs of degrading. It maintained its bright red appearance the entire time. 7 days later, Meng Hao's eyes suddenly opened. His eyes were filled with determination. This poison pill will not be a pill to give to enemies, but to oneself. Poison, but not poison. Medicine, but not medicine. This pill. He thought back to the time in the state of Jiao when he had killed Xianxia, and of the pearl little tiger had given him. The pearl caused one's cultivation base to rise by 1 level. Thanks to the help of the pearl, Meng Hao had been able to open the ancient path which led to the 10th level of qi condensation. 1. The events with the pearl occurred in chapter 75. The images from that day sprung clearly into his mind. The pearl had fearsome power, and had left a deep impression on Meng Hao. Pierce the qi vessels throughout the body, chop them like mincemeat. Turn the body into a treasure, split open the chest. Crush the mind, consolidate millions upon millions of murderous intentions. Explode the Tao pillars within the core C. Killing intent can exterminate spirits. Use the mortal soul to fuse with spirits. Use the power of killing to subvert consciousness. The mind and the core C, fused into nothing in the blink of an eye. This devilish will shall transform into a suicidal heart, which will cause the cultivation base to climb to the skies. It is not a burning of the soul, it supersedes that. This pill will be called bedevilment pill. That is because this will can only belong to devils. Meng Hao's bloodshot eyes glittered. His right hand grabbed his bag of holding and then waved it in front of him. Immediately 10,000 varieties of medicinal plants appeared to float in mid-air in front of him. Bathed in the crimson glow, the scene seemed bizarrely demonic. Meng Hao's hands blurred, and a flickering shadow appeared beneath them. Meng Hao's entire mind, all his energy, poured into the pill furnace. He catalyzed and pulverized medicinal plants. He created hybrids to look for one particular root he needed. From the time Meng Hao had begun to study the Tao of alchemy, during all the various situations in which he had concocted pills, he had never been so possessed. It was his first time to make full and thorough use all of his skill in the Tao of alchemy, all of his nature talent of plants and vegetation. His hair was wild and disheveled, and he lost awareness of everything. He was immersed in pill concoction. All his desire poured into the bedevilment pill. It was like he himself was possessed by a devil. This bedevilment pill was actually the first true pill ever created by Meng Hao in his time cultivating the Tao of alchemy. There was no formula for this pill. It didn't need one. This was a pill that contained the true will of a master alchemist, a pill that had been created by the influence of will. Therefore, its true value and price was impossible to describe. Even more important was the fact that, if a furnace lord could see Meng Hao in his current state, that person would surely go mad. In cultivation, there is enlightenment. The Tao of alchemy also has enlightenment. Pill Demon had experienced such enlightenment. So had the other 2 grandmasters in the southern domain. Some violet furnace lords might experience it once in their life, although that depended only on luck and fortune. Just now, Meng Hao had experienced alchemic enlightenment. The pill created as a result of alchemic enlightenment was as miraculous as if it had been created by the heavens themselves. It was unparalleled and unmatched. This chapter sponsored by Ye Bocci, David Botlender, Gary Cosby, Min H, and Jiashan Chen. Chapter 230. Bury devils beneath the earth. This pill concoction lasted an entire month. From the time Meng Hao had learned to concoct pills until now, this was by far the longest time he had ever spent doing so. For 1 month, he didn't rest. All of his energy was focused on the concoction of this pill. Over 10,000 varieties of medicinal plant variations, all shaped by the will of Meng Hao's mind. Based on endless adjustments and variations, it slowly transformed into a unique pill that was solely of Meng Hao. On the last day of the month of concocting, late in the moon-filled night, the blood crane pill furnace trembled. It was no longer bright red, it was gradually returning to its original color. This process took several hours. When the moonlight was beginning to grow hazy and dim outside, the furnace finally returned to its original state. Meng Hao's hair was in a mess, and his eyes filled with veins of blood. His face was pale white. His cultivation base had been rotating and emitting power for an entire month straight. Thankfully, he had 6 Tao pillars now. If he only had 5, like before, then even replenishing himself with medicinal pills, he would have been forced to suspend pill concoction midway. If alchemic enlightenment ceases before completion, then it cannot be resumed. Seeing the completely recovered pill furnace in front of him, Meng Hao took a deep breath. He was exhausted from the month of work. During the most critical part of the concocting, he had experienced what felt like a bitter struggle between life and death. He closed his eyes, and as he did, they burned painfully. A long time passed before he opened them again. Without hesitation, he lifted his right hand up to press onto the pill furnace. It trembled, and 2 black-colored pills flew out. The instant they did, a black cloud suddenly began to form above the pill furnace. The black cloud wasn't outside of the Immortal's cave. No, it was inside. The bizarre sight caused Meng Hao to stare blankly, his eyes filled with confusion. It took only a moment for the cloud to finish forming. Suddenly, lightning shot out from it, directly at the medicinal pills. At this critical moment, Meng Hao slapped his bag of holding and the meat jelly flew out. As soon as it saw the black cloud, it stared in shock. Then its eyes glowed, and it flew to meet the descending lightning bolt. It opened its mouth and consumed the entire lightning bolt. It smacked its lips as if it had just eaten something delicious. "Pill tribulation lightning," said the meat jelly, licking its lips. "So, it turns out that's the tastiest." Suddenly, its eyes fell upon the 2 pills Meng Hao held in his hands. It seemed eager to try them. "3 bullies," said Meng Hao resolutely. The meat jelly hesitated for a moment, as if it were torn about something. Finally, it returned to the blood-colored mask, muttering to itself, apparently preparing to vent its frustrations on the Li clan patriarch. Having dismissed the meat jelly, Meng Hao took a deep breath and looked down at his palm. The 2 black pills seemed to be struggling, as if they wanted to fly away. This was the first time he had concocted what were apparently sentient pills, ones that had provoked tribulation lightning. Meng Hao's eyes shone. He may be tired, but couldn't stop from staring at the 2 pills. They were essentially the same size. However, one was pitch black, whereas the other had a violet hue. It only took a moment for Meng Hao to come to the conclusion that the violet-colored pill was the superior of the 2. The other could also be considered a consummate product, just slightly inferior. Despite the struggles of the pills, they were incapable of leaving Meng Hao's hand. The 2 black pills did not emit a medicinal fragrance, and seemed to suck in all the light that touched them. If you looked at them for too long, it seemed as if your soul would be sucked inside. "I concocted these pills with true will," murmured Meng Hao. Eventually, his eyes flickered. He waved his left hand and a flying sword appeared. Very slowly, he carved a mark onto the side of each pill. It was a simple mark which depicted a cauldron. It was the same cauldron he had seen in the blessed land of the Black Civ sect, the cauldron which had desired to defeat the heavens. It wasn't a completely accurate depiction, but very close. Strangely, after inscribing the pills with the mark, they stopped struggling. The cauldron mark flickered, as if it had branded itself onto the hearts of the pills. Now, the cauldron mark suddenly seemed as if it were alive, real. Meng Hao took a deep breath, and then a smile broke out on his face. At the same time, a wave of exhaustion swept through him. He hadn't rested for an entire month. He was a foundation establishment cultivator, but this was too much even for him. He simply didn't have enough energy. This is a pill of bedevilment, the very peak of bedevilment. The brand of the cauldron represents the earth, and has suppressed it. Bury devils beneath the earth, in accordance with the name of the pill. Meng Hao retrieved a pill bottle and put the first bedevilment pill inside. He sealed it with wax, and then placed the violet-colored bedevilment pill into another pill bottle. After this, he pulled out a jade slip which he used to summon Bai Yunlai. Soon, Bai Yunlai appeared outside the Immortal's cave. He didn't have to wait long before a pill bottle flew out to land on his hand. Meng Hao's tired voice echoed out from the Immortal's cave. "Put this up anonymously in the pill auction. It's called Bedevilment Pill. Come for me when the auction is about to begin." He sat cross-legged, his eyes closed, seemingly half asleep, immersed in restoring his energy. Bai Yunlai clasped hands in salute, then left with the pill bottle. 3 days flashed by. During that time, the entire state of Eastern Emergence bustled with activities as one sect after another arrived in Violet Moon City. 1. Violet Moon City was first mentioned in Chapter 209, when Meng Hao first arrived in Violet Fate sect territory. There weren't just sects from the state of Eastern emergence, but from other places as well. In fact, all of the other 4 great sects, as well as the 3 great clans, all dispatched disciples to the Violet Fate sect to participate in the yearly pill auction. Actually, for an event to take place yearly made it a somewhat frequent event. Nonetheless, it still attracted the attention of cultivators throughout the entire southern domain. That was because all of the items in the auction were concocted by master alchemists of the East Pill Division. Furthermore, furnace lords would usually participate as well, and would provide a unique variety of medicinal pills. The medicinal strength of their pills would be considerable, enough to cause a sensation in the southern domain. Occasionally, stunning, one-of-a-kind creations would appear. Every year, different master alchemists' names would rise and then spread throughout the outside world. You could say that the pill auction was a platform for master alchemists to gain fame. Of course, the East Pill Division encouraged this, and urged the master alchemists to concoct pills to sell at the auction. Not only were the master alchemists encouraged to provide medicinal pills so that their fame would grow within the southern domain, but also for material gain. After all, the profits from the sale of the medicinal pills all went back to the master alchemists. This was a set rule, which caused virtually all of the master alchemists to participate. Furthermore, the Violet Fate sect strictly controlled its medicinal pills. The only way for outsiders to acquire them was by participating in the pill auction. There would always be a few types of pills that would give rise to frenzied bidding. Usually, this was not because of the medicinal strength of the pill alone, but also the concoction method used. After all, despite not acquiring the pill formula, research of the pill would reveal much about the methods which had been used to concoct it. The master alchemists of the Violet Fate sect had no way to prevent this from happening. Anyone with sufficient skill could perform such research on medicinal pills. In short, it is easy to imagine the stir caused by the yearly pill auction. The location of the pill auction was, of course, Violet Moon City. In the southeast corner of the city was an enormous circular edifice, a stadium which could seat 100,000 cultivators. Generally speaking, during every pill auction, because of the influx of cultivators from all regions, the seats would be completely filled. The pill auction usually lasted for 7 days, and could be rated as a grand occasion hosted by the Violet Fate sect. This particular day was the first day of the auction. The auction stadium was already full. The eyes of the cultivators from all the various sects and clans were focused on the stage in the middle of the stadium. Standing there was a middle-aged man who smiled and clasped hands respectfully to the audience. Fellow Taoists of the Southern Domain, ladies and gentlemen, you all know the rules of the Violet Fate sect's pill auction, so I won't go into all the details. We have a total of 789 types of medicinal pills up for auction, including pills appropriate for chi condensation, foundation establishment, core formation, and even nascent soul stage cultivators. Furthermore, there will be poison pills and magic pills available as well. According to the rules of the Violet Fate sect pill auction, before auctioning each pill, a small shaving will be taken to test the medicinal strength of the pill, as well as to clearly demonstrate its effectiveness. Having said that, the man waved his hand, causing a gigantic curved portal to open up behind him. Bright ripples spread out, after which everyone could see a group of 700 cultivators standing on the other side, their faces expressionless. These cultivators had cultivation bases of various levels, and their ages were different. There was one similarity between all of them, however. All of their eyes glowed with a violet light. Outsiders might not know what this meant, but Meng Hao would. It would only take one glance for him to determine that these people had all cultivated the violet chi to the West technique. These were puppet disciples of the sect. 2. Violet chi to the West was described in Chapter 114. These cultivators of the East Pill Division have been selected to sample all the pills which will be auctioned today. Ladies and gentlemen, most likely this is not your first time to attend our pill auction, so you must surely already know, the Violet Fate sect's pill auction is unmatched in the entire southern domain. The man's voice echoed throughout the stadium, which subsequently filled with respectful laughter. "Let the auction begin," the man cried. Lot 1 is a bottle of Yang toppling pills concocted by Furnace Lord Liu Yong of the East Pill Division. Transform life force into death chi. Cause enormous transformation. Use this pill in your immortal's cave to collect yin powers. Consume it to cause an abrupt rise of death chi. This pill is suitable for any fellow daoist who cultivates spirit puppet arts. Even as the man's voice rang out, Bai Yunlai and Meng Hao were hurrying toward the stadium. Being a master alchemist, Meng Hao caught the attention of many apprentice alchemists as he entered. He sat down in the pavilion reserved for master alchemists, and then looked down at the auction proceeding below. He took a deep breath of anticipation. He keenly anticipated finding out if people would be interested in his bedevilment pill, and how high of a price it would fetch. After all, since becoming a master alchemist, he had never been more pleased with a pill. Although he had complete confidence in it, he was a bit worried about whether or not it would be profitable. He glanced over the crowd, a thoughtful expression on his face. Suddenly, a look of shock appeared, which then transformed into a slight smile. His gaze had fallen onto a group of visitors, amidst whom was a certain fat young man, casually grinding his teeth.